meeting to order. I invite you to join with me in the invocation. Dear Lord, we come to you in prayer at a time when we celebrate the freedom the people of our nation enjoy and expect. We ask for protection of all people, our military, and our leaders. In times of concern, we ask for acceptance and love for all individuals as you has created us as equal. Let us move beyond hatred and discord and show respect to everyone. Make us the eyes and ears of your community so that we hear and see what is needed, and let us make decisions that encourages all to help one another. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
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 Next is a special presentation, the proclamation for July of National Parks and Recreation Month.
Good evening. It's just me tonight. I can just tell you that we're tired. We have been really, we're having record years in everything. So I didn't ask my staff because they're tired too. A lot are working still tonight. Pools are still open. So just wanted to bring this forward. It is National Park and Recreation Month. So just wanted to acknowledge everything that we do for our community, as far as building community. We also contribute to economic impact of our community, not only in what we invest here in the municipal, but how it's spent also elsewhere and what we bring in. And then also the resilience that we've shown over the past few years. So,
Do you want to read it, Lisa?
sure.
While you're bringing it up, I will tell you that last Friday night, even though it was our regular July Food Truck Friday, I met folks from Concord and from Charlotte that had come out, and we've got folks coming from everywhere to those events.
Okay. Proclamation of July as Park and Recreation Month in Albemarle, North Carolina. Whereas park and recreation is an integral part of communities throughout this country, including the state of North Carolina and Albemarle, North Carolina. And whereas parks and recreation promotes health and wellness, improving the physical and mental health of people who live near parks. And whereas parks and recreation promotes time spent in nature, which positively impacts mental health by increasing cognitive performance and well-being and alleviating illnesses such as depression, attention deficit disorders, and Alzheimer's. And whereas Parks and Recreation encourages physical activities by providing space for popular sports, hiking trails, swimming pools, and many other activities designed to promote active lifestyles. And whereas Parks and Rec is a leading provider of healthy meals, nutrition services, and education. And whereas Parks and Recreation programming and education activities such as out of school time programming, youth sports, and environmental education are critical to childhood development. And whereas Parks and Recreation increases the community's economic prosperity through increased property values, expansion of the local tax base, increased tourism, the attraction and retention of business, and crime reduction. And whereas Parks and Recreation is fundamental to the environmental well-being of our state. And whereas Parks and Recreation is essential and adaptable infrastructure that makes our communities resilient in the face of natural disasters and climate change. And whereas our parks and natural recreation areas ensure the ecological beauty of our state and provide a place for children and adults to connect with nature and recreate outdoors. And whereas local parks in our state generated over $6 billion in economic activity and provided over 37,000 jobs, ranking North Carolina as the 10th in the nation. And whereas the U.S. House of Representatives has designated July as Parks and Recreation Month, And whereas the state of North Carolina and Albemarle, North Carolina, recognizes the benefits derived from parks and recreation resources, now therefore be it resolved by Albemarle City Council that July is recognized as Parks and Recreation Month in Albemarle, North Carolina.
Thank
Move,
you. I'll entertain a
move
motion to approve.
approval.
Motion by Councilmember Hall to approve the proclamation.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Townsend. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Lisa, thank you, and thank you to all your staff for all you do. Number 4, consider approval of the minutes for the June 30th, 2022 regular meeting, the June 21st, 2022 minimum code meeting, and recess meeting from June 20th, and closed meeting.
Move approval.
Motion by Councilmember
Second.
Townsend, second by Councilmember Hughes. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Next, we move into public hearings. The first public hearing will be on ordinance 2249 to consider a zoning ordinance text amendment. I will allow anybody that wants to come forward and speak to do so after staff introduces.
Thank you, council. I would like to pass out something real quick for us before I go into explaining. Director Kevin Robinson is going to pass you a staff analysis and an updated ordinance there.
Yeah.
Okay, so I will begin to explain what's been given to you here in a second. I'm just going to introduce this text amendment first and just explain what you do have there. So this text amendment here was brought to us by Burleson Square LLC, Mr. Joseph Burleson. He is present tonight. And essentially what it's doing is adding to Chapter 92.102, General Highway Business District in the C subsection there, special uses permitted, a number 14, colleges, universities, technical institutes, public elementary and secondary schools, and private schools having curricula substantially the same as offered in public schools, and including dormitories when located on the campus of any of the above. And so what you have before you is a copy, a page out of the GHBD section 92.102. I'm going to scroll down here for a second. During our planning board review, we it been brought to our attention that there's some formatting errors. But if you're looking at the screen here as we scroll through, these are all allowed by right. These uses 84, 85, 86, 87. And then you slowly get down here to section C. It says the following special uses are permitted when authorized by the city council after the council holds a public hearing. And so you have number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. And so what we've done here is number 14 is what we're adding in red. So if you look at your sheet that I've handed you, a copy of this page here, there's a little bit of a formatting error. I just want to go ahead and get that cleared up here. But D and E essentially changed to I and J. They are a part of number 13 here, the donation drop boxes. So those are just our minor changes here, changing D and E to I and J. And then we have 14 following right after J, and then you change F to D. But those are just minor formatting issues. And so, but what we have here tonight, what we're talking about specifically tonight, let me get to my staff analysis here. So
And I and J have nothing to do with 14. I and J are in subsection 13.
yes, ma'am. thank
Very
you.
good.
And 13, yes, ma'am. That's right. They're in 13. And so 14 is separate in itself and follows after J. So I just want to speak to the reference of the future land use plan and the staff analysis, which you've also been provided. So staff does believe the aforementioned text amendment is consistent with the future land use plan, making educational uses available in other zoning districts, not just GHPD, which I'll mention here in a second, but lack of educational opportunities was a key issue and concern in the future land use plan. Thus, by allowing educational uses by approval of a special use permit will increase the number of district schools may be operated in. In addition, college, universities, technical institutes, public elementary and secondary schools, and private schools are allowed upon the approval of special use permit authorized by the city council in the following districts, which is our residential R15, R10, R8, R6, RO, NBD, CBD, SCD, MUSCD, HMD, LID, and HID. Lastly, the commercial areas on the future land use map are generally located along major thoroughfares that contain a wide array of commercial uses. Typical retail uses include shopping centers, restaurants, and convenience stores. Other heavier uses may include many warehouses and automobile sales lots. Development considerations include traffic compatibility with abutting residential areas and the appearance of new and existing development, as well as the availability of adequate infrastructure. So on July the 7th, when we brought this before the planning board, they unanimously approved for this amendment to be placed into the special uses section, along with those minor formatting issues. So based on the intent of the future land use plans, need for more educational opportunities, the commercial designated areas, and the intent of the general highway business district use, and existing special use permits of schools allowed in a variety of other zoning districts, staff believes that this request is consistent with the land use plan and the ordinance.
Council have questions of staff? Hearing none, this is a public hearing. Anyone who cares to speak for or against, please come forward.
Mr. Mayor and council staff, appreciate your service to our city, first of all. But I'm obviously here in support of this. It's something I requested from staff, and after talking, it through with staff, it seemed that, maybe this was just accidentally left out at some point, but it certainly seems like it makes sense to be.
Excuse me, would you raise the microphone? There you go.
It seems like it certainly makes sense for it to be in general highway business. It's in a lot of the other zoning districts. Not sure why it's not in there, but I would appreciate your consideration and support of it, and certainly I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
For the record, give me your name and address.
Joseph Burleson, 248 Market Street, Locust.
Council have any questions? Comment? Anyone else care to speak for or against?
Move the public hearing be closed.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Hall to close the public hearing, second by Councilmember Townsend. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries.
Move ordinance 2249.
Motion by Councilmember Hall to approve
Second.
ordinance 22-49, second by Councilmember Dry. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Move on to number 6, another public hearing to conduct a quasi-judicial hearing to consider a special use permit 2201 for a school at 1552 NC 2427. Again, I will allow people to come forward and speak, but in this case, this is a special circumstance.
For the approval of the ordinance, can we go back and do a statement with that? That's required for text amendments as well.
Okay,
With what?
Ms. Hall, will you adopt the consistency statement?
With the consistency statement. That,
And let's revote again just to make sure. Ms. Hall makes the motion with the consistency statement to approve 2249. Second is by Councilmember Dry. Further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Now, as we were talking about quasi-judicial hearing, this is a little different circumstance where you have to have standing in order to speak on this tonight. If there's a question on whether you have standing, our attorney will make that decision. First, I'll let staff introduce, and then I'll ask anybody that wants to come forward. But if you do intend on speaking, please come up and let's swear you in at the same time we're swearing in staff. Anyone who cares to speak, come up and get to be sworn in at this time.
before we hear from them, I've got a point of clarification that I want to ask when we get started.
Left hand on the Bible, raise your right, please. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God? Thank you.
I just want to ask a question before we get started. I believe I know the answer. Well, I do know the answer, but I would like for it to come out before we ever start this. This particular building or place that we're talking about for this special use permit for a long period of time was part of Stanley Community College. Is that not correct? Your cosmetology.
Yes, cosmetology.
The cos-
Okay. It might have been before I was here. I'm not
Okay,
sure.
It
but
was.
so
Yeah.
I just think we're on a level playing field if we realize that this was part of, and it may have been there actually when it was Stanley Community Institute. I mean, it's been there a long time,
Yes, it
so I can't, I mean, it's been there already being used for a long time.
Sure.
Might have been early on.
Sure. And this application is to follow along with the the text amendment that was just approved by council. Again, the Reverend Jim Hunsucker with Day Spring Christian Academy has applied for a private school, Day Spring Christian Academy, to be located there at Burleson Square. And they have provided answers to the 5 criteria for the special use permit. And I'm going to go through those. I have to skip around a little bit for you, but I'll just go through all of them. We do need council to hear and approve each one of the 5 before approving the SUP if it's to be approved tonight. And let me back up. We're all aware this is on 2427 at Burleson Square, the corner of St. Martin Road. The use will not materially endanger the public health or safety if located where proposed and developed according to the plans as submitted and approved. Let me scroll forward down here. It's been a while since we did this. I'll try to organize this a little bit better next time. The applicant's response is that the property is a commercial property that is surrounded by commercial property. The section of the building that they're asking for was previously used by Stanley Community College Cosmetology. It's Mayor Pro Tem's question there. We're a private Christian academy that wants to offer educational alternatives for current and future citizens. The student drop-off will be as follows. The vehicles will enter the rear public vehicular area located on St. Martin Road, travel to the rear of the building, drop off students at the rear entrance, then circle around and exit back onto St. Martin Road. Students, parents, and staff with disabilities will pick up and drop off by continuing around to the east side of the building where the accessible entrance is located. They will then exit as they entered. Ample parking is available in the front parking lot. The students will never be near 2427 bypass. Physical activity, breaks, PE will take place in the rear of the property away from the roadway. The use meets all required conditions and specifications. They just agreed with that. The use will not substantially injure the value of adjoining or abutting property, or alternatively, the use be a public necessity. Mr. Burleson's left a statement there about the proposed use of the property being in harmony. They have also provided a website, some website material, I believe, that's related to property values in relation to school location. Proposed use is in harmony with adjacent uses in terms of location, scale, site design, hours of operation, and operating characteristics. The hours of operation will be from 7:30 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. Monday through Friday, and will follow the Stanley County school calendar. The new commercial use will be well within an existing commercial structure. There are a variety of uses within the structure. School will have an average of 45 to 50 students. More students will be allowed if they are a sibling of a current student. There will be a maximum of 75. 50 students is the goal. The school would fit in well with the surrounding businesses and properties. That it be in general conformance to the adopted plans. It will conform with the adopted plans. They hope to fill the need for more schools and look forward to becoming a vital addition to the city of Albemarle. Scroll back up here. This is the traffic circulation they provided as well to show how it will provide safe access for the school kids during the day, with drop off and pickup being at the rear here to keep as much as possible the foot traffic and stuff out of this parking lot area, which is closer to the highway. As was mentioned, there is access right here ADA accessible access right here as well for any students that need it. Staff believes the proposed SGP for a private school, if approved, will not materially endanger the public health or safety by being located in a suite within the primary building. As mentioned in the past, the suite was used by Stanley Community College Cosmetology School. The applicant's proposed student drop-off and pickup location will be located on the back side of the building with access to the front of the building by stairs located on the side of the building. And it will minimize any traffic concerns directly fronting on 2427. Students will not be waiting for the rides near 2427. Lastly, the applicant will obtain and abide by all building, fire, marshal, zoning, and state code permits and requirements. The use meets all required conditions and specifications. Staff agrees that this does meet all those conditions and specifications set forth in 92.102. And their response to that. No changes will be done to the current site outside of the required changes by the inspectors. That's on placement. Parking spaces, the other part of that, parking spaces with ingress and egress, location of on-site parking, designated loading area, and means of ingress, egress for all vehicles, including service vehicles. You've seen the site there. The response is the parking area is already established. The loading and unloading will take place at the rear of the building, in the front as needed. They'll have signage at the entrance and exits, as well as arrows to mark the traffic pattern. Faculty and staff will monitor drop-off, pickup, and traffic pattern. Environmental impacts. The site will not have any impact on the environment. Screening, buffering, and landscaping. The site is maintained by the property owner right now. We do not have any additional buffering requirements for this use on this property. Effect on nearby properties. The effect of proposed uses on nearby properties, including but not limited to the effect of noise, odor, lighting, and traffic. The only change to traffic will occur between 7:30 and 8 a.m. and 3:15 and 3:30 p.m. Compatibility, level of general compatibility with nearby properties and impacted neighborhoods, including but not limited to the appropriateness of scale, design, and use in relationship to other properties. There will be no exterior change to the site unless required by code. Consistency with policy. They affirm that they will consistently follow policy, plans, purpose, and zoning regulation. There are no other factors that they listed which they felt that council would need to consider for appropriateness of this property. Staff's analysis on the use will not substantially injure the value of adjoining or abutting property, or it's a public necessity. As it per the real estate opinion located in the applicant's response, staff believes that surrounding property values will at least be maintained by the allowance of the special use permit. The proposed use being in harmony with adjacent uses in terms of location, scale, site design, hours of operation, operating characteristic. Per the applicant's proposed days and hours of operation, maximum of 75 students, traffic flow for drop-off and pickup, and exiting surrounding commercial uses, staff believes the proposed use is in harmony with adjacent uses. And B, in general conformance with adopted plans. Staff believes the proposed SUP will be in general conformity with the future land use plan 2028 by providing additional educational opportunities for local residents. Furthermore, schools as allowed by approval of a special use permit within the current zoning district are allowed. Excluding any requirements applied to meet basic approval of the preliminary subdivision, there appear to be no additional conditions recommended by staff for the property at this time.
Council, now that you've heard the introduction, does anyone have a conflict of interest or anything that we need to say about having any contact with anybody about this? Okay,
Ms. Shirley.
louder. Anyone care to speak for or against that was sworn in? Please come forward.
I'm Reverend Jim Hunsucker. I live at 434 North 10th Street here in Albemarle. I want to thank you, Mayor, council members, and staff for taking time to consider our request. I have been in the school system, both public and private, since 1993. I've also, all my adult life, I've been in emergency services. I've been on the police department, sheriff's office over in Montgomery County. I've been in West Montgomery and West Middle School since 1993 in different capacities. When we came here, I'd actually homeschooled one of my sons, and I was recently remarried, and we have a total of 13 children. 7 of them are still at home. So we knew it was going to be a chore just to even try homeschooling all the children that are still at home. But we also checked around and saw that there was a need there was not enough spaces in the current Christian schools here in the town and in the county. And also a lot of the tuition and fees were well above what the average person could pay for even one student. We're trying to keep tuition, from what we've seen, our tuition will be anywhere from $75 to $100 a month less than the other schools. And we're going to specialize in special needs children. We have one child that's gone through 4th grade unable to read. And just the time that he's been out for a summer vacation, he's already reading at a 1st grade level, just because we were able to focus on that. Couldn't even say his alphabet without help, but he is currently doing that now. So we're not trying to take away from anything. We're trying to add to. We just want to be an alternative for education, and we will be able, when the doors open, we will be from, we'll go accredited all the way to 12th grade high school, and the diploma is accepted at Duke, NC State, Wake Forest, Carolina, all the major colleges and universities in our state. So I'm happy to answer any questions you may have for me.
Council have any questions?
Just got a quick one. You mentioned the special needs children and plus the grades. Is that facility ADA accessible? Do you know what, does it have an elevator or does it has
The
to?
front entrance it has ramps, and at the front door, that's where they'll be accessible. I spent 3.5 years in a wheelchair, so
Yeah.
I understand that necessity. So I will make
But
sure.
the younger children will be on the ground level?
Well,
Or-
the front is ground level. There's the rear
So
has another level that we won't use.
Oh, okay.
So,
Okay.
So, but to that question, the front is street level,
yes.
but there is a basement. Isn't there correct, Joseph? Did there used to be a knitting facility or sewing facility down there?
Yes, there is a basement, but they're not planning to utilize that basement at all.
So you're just gonna be using the
Ju-
upstairs?
Just using the upstairs.
Just that first floor?
And to answer any questions about the ADA compliant, if you all remember, the tag office was there,
Mhm.
and the state came out and inspected everything when we placed the tag office there several years ago, and they certainly passed, the strict guidelines that the state required. I mean, they're really looking at everything from ADA compliant. So everything on that level, on the street level, is ADA compliant.
But they'll be entering on the back level. Is that?
I think he's planning on utilizing the back for those that don't need the ADA access, but for those that do need the ADA access, they'll come around to the front.
But so children will be dropped off behind, but have to walk around the front because the entrance is where you're gonna.
I think he's going to utilize the back entrance.
Gotcha.
Yep, there's a staircase there.
Gotcha.
Further questions? Anyone else care to speak?
Motion to close public hearing.
Second.
Have a motion to close the public hearing by Councilmember Townsend, second by Councilmember Hall. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries.
Move to.
Mr. Robinson, will you come up and bring up the findings of fact so council can see them on the screen as we go through them? Okay. Will you put up the one that's got the staff analysis on it? Sure. Council, as you're looking at this, when you say where you were making a motion to approve or not approve, you need to cite some reason of why you're approving it. And if you want to use the staff analysis as your reason, that's fine. All right, we'll take the first finding of fact. The use will not materially endanger the public health or safety if located where proposed and developed according to the plan as submitted and approved.
Move approval, and I'm gonna use, because it's been used in for that specific use in the past, when Stanley Community College was there.
Have a motion by Councilmember Hall,
Second.
second by Councilmember Hughes. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. The use meets all required conditions and specifications.
Motion approved using the staff analysis.
Motion by Councilmember Whitley to approve,
Second.
second by Councilmember Hughes. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Number 3, the use will not substantially injure the value of adjoining or abutting property, or that the use is a public necessity.
Move approval with staff analysis. Second.
Motion by Councilmember Hughes, second by Councilmember Hall. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Number 4, the proposed use is in harmony with the adjacent uses in terms of location, scale, site design, hours of operation, and operating characteristics.
Move approval with staff analysis.
Motion by Councilmember Hall, second by Councilmember Louder. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. And number 5 is be in general conformance with the adopted plans.
Move approval.
Motion by Councilmember Hughes, second by Councilmember Dry. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries.
Now we need to move approval
Yes, ma'am.
of SUP 2201.
Motion by Councilmember Hall to approve 2201,
Second.
second by Councilmember Whitley. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank
Council,
you.
we will bring the order for that to be signed by the mayor.
Okay.
Thank you.
Council, the municipal calendar is in your agenda. Questions, comments? Move to the consent agenda. Number 8, ordinance 2250, amending the fiscal year 2022-2023 operating budget. Number 9, resolution 2224, ratification of Central Regional Council's amended charter. Number 10, resolution 22-25, setting of a public hearing to consider a petition for voluntary annexation of 36.67 acre parcel on Anderson Road and Highway 2427. Number 11, request for road closure for YMCA Kids Triathlon. And number 12, consider road closure for Albemarle Night Market.
Move approval of consent agenda.
Have a motion by Councilmember Townsend to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Hughes. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to new business. Consider agreement of professional engineering services for the Long Creek Wastewater Treatment Plant Rehab Project. And I believe we have engineer here to speak with us.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. Thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight. I think if I hit, there you go. So what I want to talk to you about tonight is a topic we've been discussing periodically since mid-2020. The study and report kind of upfront process relative to the funding agency requirements is complete, and so we want to talk to you about next steps. But Mayor, first, just kind of give you a quick refresher. We'll talk about requested action at the end, and then, of course, answer any questions that you might have. So I'm going to roll through this a little bit quickly because I think it is information you've seen before. Please, let me know if you have specific questions. But your serious troubles at the wastewater plant date back into the fall of 2018. If you remember, Hurricane Florence, then Hurricane Michael were really the two culprits for that. our team started working with your staff and studying the plant and developing detailed process models towards the end of 2019 to see if is there a better way we can do this that will reduce your risk of non-compliance and accomplish several other goals. And that really began multiple interactions with you, a lot of interaction with your staff, visiting some other facilities so they can see how some other systems are operating. And you applied for funding in the fall of 2020 and were awarded funding in the spring of 2021. I should note the number here, 19,380,000, is the updated number in the funding agency approved engineering report. So you actually applied for, I think it was just over 16 million. And of course, as you, I'm sure, understand, those numbers have changed, and we are reflecting the most recent budget and approved estimate. And so you, $500,000 of that is forgiven, basically a grant, and the remaining is a 20-year loan, a near 0% interest. So just some benefits. What we're targeting here primarily is, let's make sure that we significantly reduce your risk of non-compliant events, right? I think the state, through the special order by consent, they're acknowledging there's some serious challenges. We want to fix those to the fullest extent that we can. We also want to make this a more operator-friendly system. If we recall some of the pictures that we've shown, right now you have a lot of your mechanical, electrical equipment that's floating in the basins themselves. Not only are they inefficient, expensive to operate, but they're also cumbersome and not the most fun to have to perform maintenance and replacement on. And then we're also trying to make sure we can provide your staff the ammunition they need to properly treat your wastewater across a broad spectrum of influent strengths and influent parameters. And that bottom one's really what we're after with the transition. Some added benefits, again, we've discussed these, but just to refresh your memory, you have 4 aeration basins there now. They all operate in parallel. Our calculations are able to show pretty clearly that only 2 of those basins are needed to accomplish the level of treatment we need, which allows you to transition the remaining 2 basins for flow equalization, which means that they will remain almost empty most of the time. And as you have significant storm events, it gives your operators, it gives your staff a cushion, because they can manipulate the plant's operation and basically dump those high flows for a little while. It won't last for a long hurricane over the course of several days, but these significant storms, summer evening storms, or even 1 or 2 day winter storms, it will give them the ability to hold that so they don't have to pass it all through the plant. The middle bullet there, a major benefit to you, the change in the process will require a significantly lower motor horsepower than what you're using now. And Mr. Ferris, your staff sent us some updated numbers late last week, but using your current charge per kilowatt hour that the city charges itself for the wastewater plant, it's right at $330,000 per year calculated reduced electricity costs. Now, you are an electricity, so that is kind of you paying yourself, but there are lots of ways to look at that. For one, you're not buying that power from the grid, and it also gives you the ability to offer that back to current and new customers without additional infrastructure to support that. So we think that's a major benefit. And that savings alone, Mayor, you probably recall, amortizes about a third, actually a little more than a third of the project cost itself. The bottom bullet there, the change in motor horsepower and the change in configuration of how we'll energize the aeration process significantly reduces the scope and the cost of the major electrical upgrades needed at the plant. If you recall, in 2013, you had a comprehensive study performed that recommended a multi-year level of improvement. So what this project does is basically you've implemented the first year, so the years 2 through 6, and going to smudge them into one project, and it's a significantly lower cost project and a much simpler and easier to execute. So that's another major benefit for it. Just a real quick update on where we are right now. The funding agency does require a study and report phase. As you can, I'm sure, understand, the Division of Water Infrastructure staff is very, very busy right now with all of the funding that was going on this spring. So it took quite a bit longer than everybody expected, them included, to get through that report process. So to give you an updated feel for where we are, this is the schedule that your staff has seen and that the state has approved relative to going forward with this project. And the number that, or the time frame that really matters is when will this debt hit your budget, and we're expecting that to be fiscal year 2027. I've breezed through some of the milestones, but if design starts now, we're thinking about 15 months to get that completed. Permitting and funding agency approval, bidding, awarding the project, and then actually putting a shovel in the ground in summer of 2024. And construction will take about 18 months. And then, as you probably recall with this program, the debt hits your books 6 months after the completion of the project, which is where we push to fiscal year 2027. So just considering or requesting your consideration here tonight, I do think that it's you know, as your partner and being relationship centric, we've talked about this project quite a bit, and we've heard a lot of really good questions. We've worked with your staff. We visited other facilities, and we have continued to feel like you support what we're doing. You support the solutions. You support the addressing the challenges. I think it's prudent for me to say that this will be the first significant investment that you will make relative to moving forward. To date, your commitment to the project has not come with a significant price tag, whereas now this will kind of be embarking on actually investing in the project. So I wanted to offer that in case there were some other questions you wanted to go over, or just if there were any concerns you had, to make sure we're addressing those. And then, Mayor, what we're asking is your consideration of the agreement that we provided your staff. All of the engineering fees presented in that agreement have already been approved in concept by the funding agency, and they will be captured in the project funds once construction begins. So I'm going to pause there and answer any questions you may have.
Council, questions?
So these fees, engineering fees, are included in that estimate of total cost?
That is correct. Yes.
Well, I mean, we've got to do it. I mean, there's no joke. We've got to do it. I almost asked, though, that item 14 hit us before item 13 hit us, because I know that you're coming to talk with us about that. In your professional engineering opinion, should we hold off? I mean, if we're going to do it, I mean, I'm going to make a motion in a moment to do it, but should we hold off until we hear from you about your take on the designation of the distress?
I'll yield to you. I was planning, and your staff had mentioned to me the next item, and we saw it on the agenda. So we fully expect to stick around and offer whatever expertise we can relative to that subject. I don't think your designation of distressed has an impact on this specific project.
Okay.
So relative, now it can have a lot of impact and likely benefits on going forward
Right.
and other funding opportunities.
Right.
I do not think it will have an impact on this specific project.
Because of where we are in the process.
That is correct.
Okay.
So you don't think any potential grant funding would be available for this project? I mean,
So,
since
and
it's
I
already
should offer,
started.
it's always possible that things can change, right? And
Sorry.
the specific guidelines for the fall applications have not come out yet. Our staff will be engaged on those over the next 3 weeks or so. If you recall, in the previous round, when the state budget allocated a significant amount of the American Rescue Plan Act
Right.
funds, those utilities that fell in the top, and they had a name for it, I'm forgetting, but it was the highest scoring distressed systems, which means they were the worst. They were asked to, if they wanted to, they could resubmit funding that had already been awarded, and the authority would consider replacing loan funds with grant, and that happened some. Now, this specific, and the way those, and what we can do, all we can do, Mayor, is look backward and try to project forward. What they did in the spring would not have applied to you, because the way you're scoring right now, even though you're in that distressed tier, you're not in the top tier.
Okay.
And I know that's kind of
No,
the
no.
details, but
Yes.
I will, however, offer, if we find out that they are changing that, we will absolutely
Okay.
push this forward and come back to you as quick as we can to make sure that you take advantage of every opportunity you can you can to defray debt, of course.
Further questions?
Adam, with the projected growth that we're having and we're going to have over the next 5 to 9, 10 years, are we going to be looking to do and add on to this at some time in the future? Or is this going to be enough to take us through this growth process that we're going to be facing?
So I'll answer that. This specific project will not increase, when the project is completed, it will not increase the capacity of your plant. Now, it will set you up a little bit indirectly, but in a very favorable position. It will set you up so that when you do want to expand, if and when you do want to expand, the cost and the effort to do that will be a lot less than what it is now. Now, relative to your specific question and the timing, I think I have a reasonable understanding of the growth you're considering, or growth that could be coming, compared to the current flows seen at the plant. And I don't think in the near term, 5 to 10 years, you're facing an expansion at that plant. Now, you guys may know something, and Mr. Ferris might be telling me to hush that I'm not aware of, but you still have a fair amount of capacity. I think not quite half. Mr. Henson might know, but not quite half of that capacity is still available in that plant to be allocated.
But this will make it more efficient.
Absolutely.
I think
Yes.
that's the
Yeah.
biggie.
I just don't want, I look around up here, 9 years from now, we're not going to be here.
Amen.
Some of us may still be here, but not here.
Not here.
I just don't want something, they go back in the books and say, we didn't look at this thing in the bigger picture. And I think we've had to address issues previously that sort of knocked us out of the saddle a little bit. And just want to make sure that what we're doing is going to increase the efficiency. I know with the different stuff that we've done coming out of Stony Gap and those situations, we can't control hurricanes.
Right.
But as long as we're getting to a point to where it's going to be a benefit long term, then I'm certainly fine with that, leaving that to the future people to address.
I can assure you that after completion of this project, the pathway to expansion will be much, much easier, simpler, more efficient, and much less expensive. Now, that's not the primary motivator for this project, as I'm sure you
Right.
understand, but that has been part of our thought process as we
But it
work
is
with
a
your staff
factor.
to put it correct. That is correct.
Council members, we have been talking about doing a water and sewer study, and that will give us a good idea of what our capacity are in our sewer lines that are in the ground to get it to the treatment plant.
Right.
That may be one of our next things that we have to address down the road. But we've been doing that already with, we're in the third phase of the I&I project because we've enlarged some of those. So thankfully, council has moved ahead with some of those already. Further questions?
Britt, have you seen this?
If council wishes to approve it, I can do a review after approval, but I have not reviewed it
You have not seen it, but prior to,
prior to the agenda being published.
like tonight, you have not looked at it.
I have not reviewed it yet, no ma'am.
And we're happy, we can share through your staff everything that's needed to interact.
Yeah, I think so. Move approval subject to attorney's perusal and approval.
Motion by Councilmember Hall,
Second.
second by Councilmember Hughes. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Number 14, Resolution 2226, consider designation as a distressed utility municipality for state funding. Council has received a resolution from the state that gave us the opportunity to go ahead and ask for being declared a distressed utility now rather than waiting and letting the state make that decision in October. This is the second year that we have qualified under the point system and the first time that we've had this available to us, which will actually make us more available for some state funding and grants. The reasons or the opportunities that you would have to take into consideration are in those resolution where it tells you the three things that we would have to do. I think they're pretty much standard. One of them was the water and sewer study. One of them is some training, and one of them is some financial planning, which we already do, and I think we could put all that together fairly quickly. It would make staff and council have to go through some training. So we'll make sure all of you understand that. And whether we ask for it now or we wait and see where the state designates us as that, is up to council. And Adam is here to answer any questions that you have on that. Adam, if you would come back up and tell us your recommendation.
So, Mayor, the state in 2020, I believe was when this first came out, developed the Viable Utility Reserve, which was a pot of funds that was seeded through the state budget and through other programs to help those utilities that are having the most difficult time to get out of whatever rut, whatever hole they're in. And what they did in order to establish this is they created a scoring matrix in an attempt to objectify the process for, is a utility in good shape, bad shape, or okay shape. And so, they developed matrices that looked something like this, and I think this may have been in your packet or in the letter. Every utility was passed through certain filters, and so these are things like affordability, which is a ranking of your demographics in the town, poverty rate, population growth, total population in general, median household income, and one more I'm blanking on. Do you control your water and sewer systems is one. Are you in compliance drinking water? Are you in compliance wastewater? Are you under flow moratorium? What's your service population per square mile? Right, that's one for drink water and sewer. Your rates are one. Your debt service coverage ratio, operating margin, percent depreciated assets. All those are put into a matrix, and then you're scored. And Mayor, from our review of all of this, prior to the signing of execution of the special order by consent, you scored a scoring of 5. And the threshold to be designated as distressed is 9. And the special order by consent qualified you for 4 points, which the other 5 points stayed the same, nothing changed. Well, they changed, but the points didn't change. The data changed, but the points didn't change. And then you added on having the special order by consent, which kicked you into 9. From a recommendation standpoint, Mayor, in our opinion, and you mentioned perhaps the only real negatives that could be associated with this, and maybe there's a public relations piece to this, and we respect that. And there are some, I'll just say, some effort or some resource commitment that would go along with training and additional education. But it does put you in the position to apply for a pot of money that other utilities cannot. And I don't want to tell you that it means you're going to get funding that you wouldn't have otherwise gotten, but it certainly gives you a much better opportunity. So to us, if you're asking for a recommendation, we see a lot of potential upside. And I think you described perhaps the only real downside relative to staff commitments and your own commitments. But I'm happy to answer any questions. I think it's worth stating that if you did not have the SOC, you would not be in this position.
Right.
And likely, as capital projects are implemented and executed over the next 3 to 5 years, and the SOC is withdrawn, you will no longer be in this position. So it could be a window to give you a little more opportunity over the next, say, 5 years to apply for funding.
So there's 3 parts to this. Number one, when we first got notification of this, it was a letter that was sent to, I don't know if it was sent to the manager and to the mayor, I'm not sure, but it was dated on the 21st of June, which was our last regular meeting. And with an answer that they wanted by June 30th, which blew me away because it was like, bam, 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 we need to know. And I was thinking, wait a minute, what's the need for all of this expediency on things? Because I didn't like to jump too quickly.
No, and I respect that.
Particularly in a day at end of a fiscal year, what's going on, which made me wonder is what's the downside? And you mentioned it, and the mayor used that word, and I've got it written right here. The downside of doing it, because the LGC has got to be, it is the SWIA, the water folks, plus or the infrastructure folks, plus the LGC. It's together.
Mhm.
What is and this may not be directed to you. This may be directed to our finance people or to Mr. Ferris. The downside, if we have acknowledged up front that we are distressed, and you've made the comment, we were at 5, but because they got the SOC, that put us up to 9.
Right.
So the downside, and I'm just throwing this out there just because the skepticism that I have about, well, the reason we got it is because we got an SOC. SOC is going to be gone hopefully in a couple of years, but what is that saying to us as we move forward with any other request of the LGC? I'm just trying to look at it from a different perspective than just for us to roll over and say, yeah, we're playing dead. We want this, but is there a downside to it that we're not seeing? And I don't know who to ask that of.
And Ms. Hall, I don't have a good answer to you relative. And it's a
Sorry.
really good question relative to the LGC's consideration. I can only offer you a very poor hunch. My hunch is that LGC will not look at this any differently or better or worse relative to your ability to borrow funds as a city or as a utility.
Right.
I think the LGC will continue to look at your financials, which currently are generally pretty strong. Now that could change for better or for worse. That's my opinion, and I would if Mr. Ferris has other feedback, welcome.
Yeah, I would echo what Adam has said, and also note that the way I understand the different tiers of state funding, this moves us into a different tier where they have intentionally created this separation from where we were, which is a system that was compliant, very affordable, a good ratio of service population per square mile, sewer service population depreciation, all those other things they look at. That's why we scored 5 points in 5, and
right.
The lower for that means, the better they view you. So the SSC put us into that, but as it relates to funding, the state does have this specific category, and I believe it actually has a larger pot of money available than the category we're in now prior to this designation, because they view it as, well, you can do these things on your own, which we can, but if we go into this category and it makes us eligible per state guidelines, I would hope there'd be some collaboration and syncing between state environmental regulations and LGC, because if we do move forward with funding, we're essentially saying we're trying to address these issues, and which we know any utility has more needs than they have revenues to fund. So this moves us much further along in terms of making progress than not being designated.
And I agree with that. I agree.
Chris asked me a question when that letter first came out, and I checked back on it. And my question was to them and what Chris had said, what does this do for our growth and future expansion? And I was told that it would not change it at all. There would not be anything to hinder our future growth. That's what I was told.
And who was that question asked of? Was it of?
The lady that sent us the letter.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Okay.
I'll offer a comparison. I mentioned this to Mr. Ferris. One of our clients, a longtime client, is Rockingham County, which is just north of Greensboro, between Greensboro and the Virginia line. And in this economic cycle, Greensboro has started to spill over, and Rockingham County has experienced significant both residential and commercial growth that they haven't experienced before. They are a very small utility, less than about a couple of thousand customers. And they have invested significantly in their water and sewer infrastructure in preparation for this environment. And the county leadership made that decision. Because of that, they are a very fast-growing county. They have very high rates because they're trying their best to pay this debt. Their operating ratios are well below 1 because they're subsidizing the debt with the leadership made the decision to do that. And so, I don't know their MHI, but it's probably right in the middle of the spectrum. And they are designated almost at the highest of the distressed systems. And they have used that quite well, frankly, to leverage some funding over the last 12 months. So that's one little. I think that this score sheet in general gets it right, but Rockingham County and perhaps Albemarle is a unique example of distress just doesn't quite feel like the right word.
Right.
But that's the way they describe it, right? Is that a good
That would,
comparison?
no, that's a great definition. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like the state could designate us anyway, and may very well do that.
They
I know
could,
when
right.
we were in in Wilmington for the League of Municipalities meeting, we tried to target going to the sessions on ARPA funding. Everything we heard was targeted to distressed systems. And we weren't even able to, couldn't even apply.
Right.
So at least with this, we would be in the category that, well, I guess we could submit an application for grants.
Absolutely, and the next round is coming up this fall, and as soon as we have clarity on the criteria and process, we'll interface with your staff. Looking backwards, what you said is exactly right. If you were designated distressed, you were competing against fewer utilities for a much larger pot of money. And the scoring, the preliminary scoring that's come out has reflected that, for sure.
Further questions, comments? What's your pleasure, council?
Move to approve of resolution 2226, designation of distress.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Hall to approve 2226, second by Councilmember Whitley. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Adam. Number 15, indefinite quantities contract for architectural services in the Department of Public Housing. I believe Dr. Scott has got a presentation for us or a comments.
All right, City Council, Mr. Mayor. The City of Albemarle Department of Public Housing is requesting Stogner Architect, PA, provide for support for the fiscal year 2022-2023 capital funds in the amount of $724,000 to address collapsed sewer systems in 22 units that we've already identified. We sent out 4 architectural companies the RFQ processes and packets, and they were to be returned to my office by June 28th by 5 p.m. The only company that provided a complete packet was Stogner LDA Architect PLLC. They received the information as well as the other 3, and they preferred not to be considered in the selection process due to their busy schedule. The one focus that we will have, if you agree upon Stogner Architecture to be the one architect to work with us, is to determine the scope of work or the timeline to start and to complete the sewer system repair for 22 units that we've already identified. Also identifying existing condition of cast iron sewer systems in 22 of those units that we've identified, as well as replacing cast iron sewer systems with PVC in those 22 units. Additionally, we want to add that insight towards addressing modernization of the apartments aside from sewer systems will be requested of Stogner. Our plan that we've developed is for myself and my staff to provide short-term relocation of residents during this demolition and renovation of the 22 units. We want to use the 4 units that are the burn units identified already to place those units there place the residents there temporarily so that we can do the work. Residents won't be able to stay in their apartments because of the scope of the work that we're considering. So we'll move them into the renovated burn units. Of course, they can handle 4 families at a time, and then we will address as needed those pipe issues.
Council, what you have before you tonight is for the architect, and then the architect would do the design and do the bid process and coordinate with our finance department to do the proper formal bids.
So I have a
Yes, ma'am.
question on the, I guess it's this thing, I don't.
That the RFQ you're looking at?
The
Yeah.
contract.
So
the model
there's
form.
blanks in there. Is that, I mean, I don't like contracts that have blanks.
Ms. Birch?
I think the blank that you're seeing underlined, it says per delivery order, and
Yes.
that's the option that they chose. So it's not necessarily blank.
Okay.
If you underline it, that's what they mean. Refer to the delivery order, which are the specific task orders that I think will be customize in the future, depending on conversation Stockner has with that.
Okay.
So it's not blank. Whatever is underlined is applicable
It's,
there.
okay. So what does it mean when it says indefinite and then yet it has a time period of 2 years? That seems kind of,
I think indefinite
want-
just means comprehensive of the work they're going to perform. Like it's not a set task order. It's just open to the needs that they find.
that
as
they find,
Mhm.
and it's going to be for for this 22 to 24
right for
time
the time
period.
period.
Right.
specified
Which
by
is
the-
typical what we've done in the past.
Okay.
They would do it for a 2-year time. But there is extensions in this
I
contract.
see that where if needed, 3 additional 12-month periods is what this states. So, Britt, you've read this.
I have, and these are template model agreements from HUD. They're not necessarily customizable.
Right.
The customization comes in with the task order based on the work that they find needs to be done.
Okay. So if you're
Dr. Scott, are the 4 burn units the only units that you're gonna use for temporary housing, or do you have any like at Elizabeth Heights or anything that you could temporarily put some in?
We're actually right now at full capacity, but we're also doing transfers. We're transferring individuals into units because the family sizes may have increased or decreased, and we're also doing some refurbishing of units. So right now, those are the only 4 units that we have specifically for long-term relocation of residents.
So this would be a very long-term project.
Yes.
So the last time you were up here, Dr. Scott, and or maybe the time before, I don't know, in the last couple of months, you have said to us that there are very few architecture firms that will take care of housing authority needs.
Mhm.
And I remember you saying that to us and saying 2 of them are in Georgia. Right? I mean, I remember hearing that.
Mhm.
But then I also know that there are probably 100 different housing authorities in North Carolina.
Mhm.
And I guess I have just, this is nothing against Stogner. It's just an overview. We've used them for as long as I can remember.
Right.
Okay.
Mhm.
And it almost scares me to think that there was one other in-state that this was sent to. And part of me is a little bit reluctant because it almost appears that we've not done our due diligence in finding potential folks out there. Okay. And with that said, I mean, I've heard you say they're not out there, but then on the other hand, I know that there's many other housing authorities in North Carolina.
Mhm.
But the thing that concerns me the absolute most, and this may just be me and fellow members of council may chime in, that these 22 units and the sewage issue, or as the sewer system repair, I have never heard of that before. And it seems, and if in fact we have had that same architecture firm be so engrossed with what's been going on over there, it seems like somebody would have picked that up. And I am very reluctant moving forward because it's almost like we're continuing to rubber stamp to the same people and we've not heard, what else is over there? I mean, just since you've been there, have I heard about the sewage issue?
Mhm.
And yes, it's got to be fixed. That's not the issue. The issue, in my opinion, is why did we not get other ones? And that really does scare me.
Right.
Moving
I'd
forward.
like to address that if possible.
And that's the reason I'm throwing it
Yeah.
out there.
Absolutely. I did do my due diligence in the sense of conducting research and work very diligently with our HUD field office in Greensboro. And they did note to me that there are limited amounts of architects in North Carolina with these HUD specific certifications, et cetera. Now, as far as addressing the issues that are in Amherst Gardens and Elizabeth Heights, I don't think we can put that on the blame on the architect, because in essence, it's the director's position to say what needs to be repaired, what needs to be looked at by capital funds, what are the major issues. The only way you can do that is, in my opinion, which is my experience, you cannot sit at that desk all day and not see what's in the community. So my priority list was that of sewer systems. There are other issues that exist, but as far as putting priorities and in major concern, the sewage system was left up to me to determine to bring that forward to you all.
And again, and I appreciate that because I had never heard that. And we've had, 2 or 3 or 4 directors over there in the past 15 years, and I'd never heard it, and it appears like that this was not something that happened overnight.
Right.
I do agree with you as far as my concerns about the architect Stogner. But in addition to Dr. Scott, I've also heard that same comment about there's no other architects within this area, available for public housing needs. And I was actually hoping that when these results came back, that perhaps we would have, I don't know, everything else we can go on like listserv or something and find out what other municipalities and stuff utilize, vendors and things of that nature. Have we ever done that to your knowledge? And this may not be a question for you, Dr. Scott.
Right.
I'm sure it's public housing units in every
Every
all over
county.
North Carolina. and,
Absolutely.
and we utilize that listserv for a lot of purposes. And I'm just wondering, have we ever done that just to see if we say it's only 2 or 3 or 3 or 4 or whatever day? I want to, at some point, I would like to see their names and
Right.
see who we missing.
Right.
So
I will definitely make sure that I can contact the HUD office in Greensboro and ask specifically if there is a major list. However, when I worked with them, they said that because of the time component, it would be in our best interest to utilize the ones on the list that we have because they have the exact certifications. Also, they took into consideration that there is so much construction going on that the larger architectural companies would probably be already, subdued with so much other work.
but they've been telling us that for 10 years.
Yes,
so
they
I'm used
have.
to it.
Okay, well, then what I'll do is I'll try to provide you with the list, and if you're not settled with this, then I suppose we need to do something else.
If I may, is it in the scope of their contractual agreement that they do inspections of the units? Or is it the responsibility of us, you, bringing that to the architect's attention? Where's the line drawn between who does this, who does that? Or are they supplying only architectural services based upon the needs that we have? And other architectural firms, would they fall into that same category?
Right. As far as my conversations with architectural companies and with HUD, there are specific things that they will do. As far as the architectural company is concerned, they will do the entire scope of work, look at what needs to be done, look at the best ways to save money, look at the most innovative processes that can save us money, possibly. From everything from using cameras to go inside the pipes all the way up to redesign, all the way up to the bid process, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a number of, I think it's a concerted effort of myself with the architectural companies and other subcontractors who will be working on these processes.
Yeah, I agree with that, but my question was that, or comment was that the architectural firm is not going to know anything unless we tell them, correct?
Well, let me say this. Stogner has been with us since the when I was a resident services with housing in the early 90s. I remember working with Stogner on projects specifically with the bathrooms there. So what I remember from there and in speaking with the other architects that they will come in and specifically work with us, our maintenance staff, myself, and they will basically do what needs to be done in the sense of looking at the 22 apartments that we've already identified, looking at our work orders to see if there are other areas that they need to inspect. So there'll be probably a major inspection of more units than 22. We selected 22 because of the 5-year plan specifically said for this year we could identify 22 specific units.
But we identified those for this firm. And if it was my firm and I was doing this, maybe I missed your answer to my question. An architectural firm, are they under the contract to go in and inspect units, or are they totally reliant upon what we tell them and then they go in and take a look at it?
From what it's been described to me, that they will take our advice about the units
That's
that
all I
we've
need
had
to
the
know.
most
Thank you.
difficulty issues with.
That's,
Yeah.
that's it. So anybody that we hire, their job is really relying upon us to get them involved. They're not gonna come through as the cavalry and ride roughshod and say,
No.
this was broke, this was broke, this was broke.
No.
So regardless of whom we would choose, we're still gonna fall under the director making those, communications to and getting, the information back to us.
Right. Because
And obviously, that may or may not have been the case in the
right,
past.
right. Because of the limited amount of funding too, there's no way they can come through and look at all 200 of them.
All I'm trying
Right.
to say is, folks, as we look, the architectural firm has one responsibility, and that's to do the architectural end of it, not to find out what the problems are. And obviously, I agree we need to expand our search process if it's feasible to do so, and they're out there, but we can't hold them accountable for what we don't do.
Mhm.
Further questions?
Just 3 comments in the or 2 comments in the actual agreement. It appears that, on subsection, the, signature typed signature on B, the last, article of B, it's dated 1/1/21 is what date that is dated. And in the cover letter where it looks like the introduction to the agreement, it is dated July 6th, that the agreement will be from July 6th, 22 to July 6th, 24. But when you've got a date in an agreement that says 21 prepared, it looks like to me this was just probably what he did the last time he did this and just sent it on over. So I don't know if Britt, if you have that. The agreement itself is not, the pages are not numbered, but it's under, the last thing under Article B.4.0. It's got that date of 1/1/21 on it.
We can update it if council chooses to approve it.
I can't hear you.
We can update the dates if council chooses to approve the
And,
agreement.
and that was something I think that Wayne put on here. I mean, that would have been that's something that he had on here. Again, I'm just, and I appreciate you making that comment about they can only do what we find, but it blows me away that we've got this kind of problem and we've not heard about it.
Yeah, and that's a bigger problem than just
There we
saying
go.
the verbiage. There's a human resource somewhere in
Yes, there is.
that line.
Yes, there is.
Further questions, comments? What's your pleasure, council?
My pleasure originally, I think, and then Dexter, I'm not going to speak for you, but mine would have been that we would have found or somehow had something else to look at that would actually give us. And I'm just throwing that out there.
Would he have to, I guess my question for the city manager or the city attorney, would he have to send this back out for, I guess, RFQs or whatever? Would he have to go through the whole process again?
If what? If
we didn't accept Mr. Stogner's?
That would be my gut thought based on, starting the entire process over so everyone then has an opportunity based on the reopening, for example, to participate. So for example, some of these companies could then opt in. Stogner could make adjustments to theirs, but I'll defer to
Ms. Birch is saying the same thing.
Yeah, I agree.
I guess my concern is that we keep putting this off.
Yeah.
I'd like to see this fixed. And also concern would be put it out, we've got no bids.
I don't disagree with anything that everyone has said here. Dr. Scott has identified some issues that need to be addressed and rightfully so. And there are sewer issues. Would like to not be in this position, but here we are. And so the longer we wait, the worse they get. And there's issues with sewer, potentially in apartments and things that we don't want to deal with either that aren't real good options. If we delay for a good reason, there are adverse consequences. So maybe an option is we do this, an option could be for 2 years, because that's what the contract says, and you just don't. We know at this point, 2 years from now, that we're going to seek or try some things different to seek other interested architecture firms at 2 points at that point, and don't necessarily have to opt on the 3 one-year extensions, but at least it gets this project rolling, gets it moving, gets the sewer repaired, knowing where we're headed in 2 years.
Well, and I agree exactly what you're saying, but if we got a 5-year plan to do 22 apartments every year, would you want to change architects in
that's-
the middle of the plan when you got
Well-
more years to go with the same thing we're doing?
Depends on performance.
Yeah,
you know.
I agree.
It
I agree.
Totally depends on performance, you know.
And that was what you signed and sent back, wasn't it? That 22 a year for 5 years.
That
Isn't
was in the 5-year plan.
that was in the 5-year plan.
Just because you start it, don't mean you're gonna finish
Yeah.
the entire thing.
I got one more question. If you're gonna relocate 4 families into those 4 units, I didn't do the math, but can you get 22 done in a year?
According to how
Are
long
you
it
gonna
takes.
Are you gonna prioritize vacant units to use those for relocation
Yes.
from these 20? Like, if you have a couple of units come open, hold those, move a couple of families in those instead of just
Yes,
limit.
absolutely, because we've already identified possible units that we can hold open. We just have to do the paperwork so that HUD will understand why we're taking them offline and how long possibly. We've also discovered that some of the units may not be as bad as we think they are, because we're basically going through the reports from TINMAS, which is our system for work orders, to determine how many times we've had to go out to these specific units, and the complaints and the schematic that says this is what's happening, how the sewage is backing up into the houses, et cetera. So that's how we're kind of using that determination of the 22 units. We do know that several of the pipes are collapsed under the pad. So that's how we're making our decisions about the 22. But however, we don't know what they'll find until they get into the systems and use their cameras. It could be more than 22. We don't know.
And until we get somebody on board and get our bids, we don't know how fast a plumber can get in there and actually do it.
Exactly.
Depends on how large the plumber is. We
Right.
may be looking at extended period of time on each apartment.
Absolutely.
Is there, just before anybody makes a motion, is there a way for you to bring back to us that information you just said about how many times, for instance, A3, that you've been out to that one? Because I would love, just for my own information, to see, when did we, as an authority, sitting as the housing authority, first know about such problems? Okay, and I think that I would love for us to know that. I mean, if it's gone back last year, if it's gone back for 5 years, I would love to see that, just for my own information,
Right.
because I think we've not heard it.
Right. I can get into my TINMAS system and provide you with a report.
I would love to
That'll
see
tell
that.
you how long.
Dr. Scott, the assessment of these 22 units, that was done utilizing just internal personnel or local plumbers, or who made the initial assessment of these 22 units? I guess I'm trying to wrap my head around that.
Absolutely. We had several plumbers who have been with us for a long time that came through, local plumbers came through, and they noticed that they were going to the same 22 units. Actually, it was 20 at first. They were going to the same 20 units and identifying the fact that it wasn't any blockage or solid material. It was basically, when they would put their snake systems in and use cameras, they found that the pipes were either collapsed or just things growing into them, like root systems, et cetera. So that's where we got some of our information from. Again, the other information came from TINMAS, our system that says these are the consistent issues that we're having with these specific units. And so we sent in plumbers. When I arrived in January and discovered the sewage was running out of the back of the buildings, I sent a plumber in to give just some video of some of those apartments to see what was going on. And they did develop and understand that there were collapsed pipes in the ground.
And I would say that's quite true, because black pipe is not gonna last forever.
Cast iron, right.
Especially at the joints. When they
Right.
come together, that's where the problem is. That's where they break, that's where the leakage is. And I mean, you could get a little tiny hole and a lot of water
Right.
can run through that tiny hole.
Absolutely.
And then when that thing breaks apart, I've seen them over 30 years, what can happen. And there's just no way to do it other than what we're gonna have to do.
Right. Actually, with the cast iron pipes, we also discovered that the horizontal part, the vertical part is not the issue. The issue is with the horizontal part because over time, with snaking and using acid to open those up, the acid has just been kind of dormant there in the horizontal pipe, which has caused them to, just fall into a deplorable condition and to break and rust out, basically.
Yep.
Council, what's your pleasure for architectural services?
I don't think we have a choice right now, other than to, I make the motion that we get Stogner Architecture, PA, to provide the support for fiscal year 22-23 at the allocation Dr. Scott has presented.
Motion by Councilmember Dry,
Second.
second by Councilmember Townsend. Further discussion?
And is that assumed within that we're doing this 2-year, or is that, I mean, because is that approving this with that?
I just did the 2-year as noted,
As,
22
okay,
and 23.
Council has to make the decision on each
Yeah.
year.
Yeah,
forward.
each extension has to come back to council anyway.
okay,
It's not an
so,
automatic renewal.
but this is a 2-year, so is it 22, 23, 23, 24? Or is this just that first year? Because within the body of this, it talks about a 2-year contract with a possible 3 1-year extensions.
Didn't you
So-
say the dates were July 6th of 2022 to July 6th of 2024?
Yes, it is. That's what's in here, but but then we also heard that with a possible extension. So are we doing the 2-year contract that is within this body? That's
That's
what I'm
what
asking.
I understand, because the other has to come back to council for approval if you do the 12-year extensions, 12-month.
12 months.
I have a motion by Councilmember Dry, second by Councilmember Townsend. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Number 16 is remediation of soil from underground storage tank in the alley, and I need entertain a motion to excuse Ms. Hughes for possible conflict.
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember Hall, second by Councilmember Dry. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Mayor. Moving on from excavating sewer lines to excavating contaminants from the gas tanks. CSI gave us the lab results back from the soil. We were a little bit disheartened to find that there was some minor contamination there. Of the 20 different contaminants they checked for, there was 3 of them that showed up, and those are not, they have different levels. They've got a level that is can't have any residential use of the surrounding properties because of that, and then they just have a groundwater contamination. There was just groundwater contamination there, but it is something that, and I checked with Concord Engineering about it. It is something the lab reports do get reported to DEQ. So even though it's minor, they are wanting us to do cleanup there and remediation for those. So the proposal, there's a summary of the proposal there. It's about $14,580. I've spoken with Ross. It might be possible, depending on if we can work everything out, to where some of the crews might be able to do some of this stuff, but we haven't worked all that out yet. I would plan for a full $14,000 to $15,000 cost of this proposal at this time.
I think the request is for a flat 15,000.
Yeah.
And normally I say use city crews whenever possible, but since this is a certification issue and we got to take it to DEQ and got to do something with all the dirt, I don't think our staff should even do that.
All we could do on it would be labor. You'd have to have somebody there telling them what to dig out, and then somebody telling them where to take it and scheduling all that and everything. So if there's a cost savings there and Ross's crews are capable, we can do it. But if not, we're just going to have somebody.
It's going to
do
be
all
very
of it.
minimal though, because
Right. A couple thousand probably.
Council, I think the request is to approve $15,000. What's your wishes?
Move approval, and thanks to the other departments that are opening up to use if we've got folks, but,
Yeah.
Motion by Councilmember Hall,
Second.
second by Councilmember Dry. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Move on to number 17, consider grading and slope easements on city property for the Avion development.
Thank you, Mayor. If everyone will remember, the Avion development is a approximately 700 unit mixed housing development that that council approved last year, I believe. It is the largest residential development the city has seen. When they got in there and started doing civil design on this, they ran into some issues with slope, and they are, why it's not moving. They are requesting some slope easements from the city. They're relatively minor. They only encroach probably about 30 feet or so onto the city's property in two areas. This area right here, where you can see the little line kind of coming over onto the ABC property, and then this section down here. Staff have very minor concerns about this overall. However, when ABC is done, there's likely to be some buffering required between that industrially zoned property there and the apartments and townhomes that are going to be there. So in order to minimize this, what we have recommended is that basically we swap and get easements for these areas in green to remain landscaped or vegetated to help mitigate some of that buffering that might be required on ABC later on. So it's a swapping of easements of sorts.
And we have confirmed that this in no way interferes with the location of the sewer line we're going to be putting in there.
I haven't heard anything about any kind of impact on the sewer line with this.
Have we taken that to our engineer and asked that question?
No, everything that I've seen so far, the sewer line is going in where it was expected to. The city's sewer line, you can't see it, but it comes down right here. And they are proposing to, they actually have an easement right here that they're going to be getting from an adjacent private property owner to connect to that. So
But we also turn up and go on the back side of that property. It's just not that far back is what you're telling me.
yeah, I don't think this is going to impact. I haven't seen any impact on the city sewer whatsoever with this. This was strictly just for the little bit of property that they're going to need to grade onto. And of these, I was trying to zoom in here, but you're actually going to have very minimal of this, probably only about 10 feet or so that's actually sloped down and graded down, but the rest of this will be cleared out here. So that's what they're asking for. They've met every other requirement for their civil set approval on this, for the engineered plans.
I guess in the big scheme of things, I have not been able to see, but maybe it's because I can't see, it's so small. Where is this in the big scheme of things?
This is Leonard Avenue where it ends right here. This is
'Cause I
Walmart.
can't read it, so dang small. Thank
This
you.
is Walmart right here.
Okay,
This is Leonard Avenue where it ends.
okay.
This down here, this is an
Like
inset. It
inset.
actually is over here. You can see the match line right there.
Okay.
This is Henson. So Henson is
Okay.
roughly over here, and here is Leonard coming down. And
So the
then,
inset would move to the right on our screen.
right, yeah,
Okay.
this would be up here.
Okay.
Kevin, this is a development that has the townhomes, I think,
Yep.
apartments, and then
Mhm.
there's an area for older. Okay,
Yeah, you can see there's townhomes all throughout here,
right.
and they come over here. This section right here is a senior living. I think it's 155 units. There's 220 something townhomes, and then there's 350 market rate apartments that are in here. Those are rough numbers.
Council?
Sewer
what do
line
we-
wouldn't be that close to the
Well,
boundary, would it? I
I'm
mean,
sorry, I
where's
don't
the
have,
road?
I don't have a
Where
big
does-
drawing of that. It's, the only place I think it's close is in that corner, and that's based on just a little, that Michael had. Um,
Where does our road through the park
I
come
should
in?
have brought
Can you
my
tell
big ABC
roughly?
map.
Okay, so the road through the park is not really, you see where
The
my,
road kind of looks like the blue line, but it's been modified a little bit from when this was done.
the road right here is gonna come off of Henson right here. We got this little bit of easement, of right of way from them.
Uh-huh.
So it's effectively gonna come down off of, kind of off of here. Eventually, what the plan was to bring Leonard down here and loop it back into it. The sewer,
As long as there's no-
I don't believe it shows it on here, but
as long as it doesn't interfere with construction.
I want to say the sewer comes down right in here in this low spot. And I think that's what this is for. This is this is an easement from, Dennis Pritchard,
Come on in there.
for the sewer line for their sewer line to access the city's main through there.
Looks like it turns and goes up fairly close to that lower corner of green, but I don't think it'll hit it. But what I would say, if council is agreeable with it, make sure with our engineer before we actually sign it.
Oh,
Sure.
I'd love for him to see it.
Just make sure we're good.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't think it is, but I would rather they tell us than us.
Absolutely. And yeah, we're just basically asking for approval to move ahead of this. I mean, Britt and I will work on the agreements and everything on it with them.
Council?
Well, we meet again in 3 weeks. Okay? And I'm just throwing this out there. Or actually, we meet in 2 weeks when we're meeting with the stormwater thing, information. Is this something, do we want to jump contingent upon our engineer looking at things or do we want to know for sure? I mean, this is big. I mean, this can,
I don't want to hold them up either.
no, we don't want to hold them up. But on the other hand, guys, we've got $12 million in a project down there that I don't want to mess us up.
Let staff move forward, and then if there is a conflict, they can bring it back to us, but otherwise they could move forward where the council's in agreement.
I'll double check on the sewer. Nothing that we've seen it comes close down the backside there, but they actually had to get easement from a private property owner there to access the sewer line where it goes in. So,
Okay.
but we'll check on that to make sure. Absolutely.
I'd approve the easement, subject to clearing it with the engineer that there's no encroachments.
Is that a motion? Yeah. Motion by Councilmember Whitley to approve it, subject to the engineer looking at it, and there's no encroachment. Second by Councilmember Dry. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Uh,
Those opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Coming around, Mr. Ferris,
I don't have anything to add.
Mr. Townsend,
No comments.
Ms. Hughes,
No comments.
Ms. Louder, Ms. Hall.
Thanks to all folks, the city staff and employees that came to the aid of so many people on Friday night and maybe even last night. I think it was Friday night and Saturday night, I guess it was, whenever all of the water, the rushing waters and the trees that came down. And I just appreciate folks, our entire city staff for all they did those 3 nights.
Mr. Whitley.
I got one quick item. I didn't get this put on the agenda, maybe I should have, but it's on the Catalyst Grant Program. I think you all saw the release where we met. We were able to award 6 grants. I can give you any further information you'd like. But the question I have, we had a discussion in the committee about making a change to the guidelines, and they approved it, and I wanted to bring it to council. I know that the committee has been given the autonomy to make changes and all that, but I wanted to make you aware of it, see if there was any disagreement with it. What we found on a couple of these was that, just like we saw tonight, before you do a project, you really have to do the engineering and the architectural drawings. So we had a couple of them, the request was for that. And we granted some along those lines. The problem is the stipulation in the guidelines is that a property owner or property could only apply for a grant once every 3 years. Well, if this is part of an ongoing project that's kind of coming in stages, that prohibits them from doing anything for 3 years. So to give the committee more flexibility in doing that, if you've got something that's kind of coming in stages and they feel like it's warranted, we were going to change that to one per fiscal year. And the committee, I mean, well, that's basically what the verbiage was. You can only apply once every 3 years. But we were going to change that so that one grant per property per fiscal year. And that's not to say they would get that, but something hadn't really occurred to us, and I suspect as we go through this, we're going to have more tweaks and changes, to the guidelines. But I think we got off to a pretty good start. Well, like I said, there were at least 2, possibly 3, that were in that situation where they were needing to get their engineering and architectural drawings first in order to go out to get their bids. So they couldn't even get 3 bids until they got their drawing architectural part. So like I said, we discussed that, and the committee approved unanimously in making that change, but I told them I wanted to bring it to council, see if anyone had any questions on that or any objections to doing that.
I think we should approve it too,
I
if
do
that's the
too. That's a
council.
good idea.
I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember Hughes, second by Councilmember Dry. Further discussion?
Should we put within that motion that this should go back retroactively? Meaning that the 6 you have,
I think it would still apply. It would still apply.
even
to
though
them.
they were,
Mhm.
they were given
Mhm.
it to them when it was a 3-year.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it would still.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Dry.
No, sir.
I'll entertain a motion that we go into closed session pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143, 31811, A3 and 6 for consult with the city attorney and personnel.
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember Hall,
Second.
second by Councilmember Hughes. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. So we go back into regular session.
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember Hughes, second by Councilmember Dry. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Coming out of closed session, we have nothing to report. I'll entertain a motion that we recess until the 18th at 6 p.m.
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember Hughes, second by Councilmember Townsend. Further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries.